Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Sam Boone. I'm a songwriter, producer, and audio engineer, and today let's talk about reamping. So reamping is the process of modifying or changing guitar tone through running it through amps. So this can be done a couple different ways. It can be done analog with hardware, into the real world, into using the big amps, the big studio stacks you see, or we can do it digitally with plugins. And so what I've done is I've got this lovely little session we're working on. You're going to see in like 2 seconds. And what we've done is we've gone in and tracked some live guitars. We've got some cool electric lines. I'm really vibing with it. But what I really, really want to do is make it a little grittier, kind of change the tone a little bit. And one of my favorite ways to do that is by reamping a dry signal. And so that's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to be using the UAD Marshall Plexi Classic, and we may even use the UAD SVRT Classic and do a little bit of bass reamping as well. Reamping isn't necessarily specific for guitars. Traditionally, it is used primarily for guitars, but we've got some cool synth bass in the song that we may actually throw some guitar amps on, and that's gonna be a cool way to do it. So we may try reamping even with synths, but it's a really nice way if you have it's a synth or a VSD to make it sound a little more real, a little more gritty. And even if you've tracked live guitars like we have, it's another way to change your tonality and make it feel even bigger without having to necessarily worrying about doubling or completely changing your compression or EQ. It's a nice way of just modifying and do some crazy stuff. You know, there's nothing wrong with some guitar amps. So let me go ahead and show you my session and give you a little taste of what I've been working on at the moment. So this is I've got my vocalist muted with her scratch tracks, but let's go ahead and jump right into the pre-chorus. We're going to be listening primarily to these tracks, maybe a little bit of these. I'm pretty happy with the sound of these though at the moment. And these are the two tracks we're going to be reamping, our chorus and probably a little bit into our pre-choruses. And so, yeah, here we go. So right now, one of the things I'm pretty happy with that general balance. I kind of want this to cut through a little more and be almost a little grittier. I'm really vibing with Olivia Rodrigo's new album, and I'm loving the guitar work on it. I'm a sucker for electric guitars, any of you who know me. So that's kind of the purpose of reamping right now. There's a couple different ways we can do it. I personally like to reamp before compression because compressors are going to change the tonality and how you're reacting with your amps. I will compress afterwards, or I may just even go in and do like very, very light compression just to level everything out after this. But I like to actually reamp first because there's two ways we can do it, right? So we can put it directly on our channel right here. So I literally just have EQ on this guitar take. So not bad. Let's solo it up, give it a quick listen. Not bad. So it's kind of the backbone, right? So we're going to pair it with these. These are kind of panned. Those are a nice texture rhythm layers. So this is really our true blocking out our chord changes, really giving us a nice like power chord, power ballad, like rock feel. But it's kind of subtle because I want it to just kind of help move the track along. Same thing with this pre-chorus. It's just some nice little pick-me-ups. So So I'm liking the sound of that already, but I definitely want them both to stand out a little more. And so what I'm going to do is we can do it the first way, especially with this, is we're going to put it directly on the channel. This is going to make a really strong sound. It's going to be how you get the most sound like the amp you're modeling. And what I mean when I say that is, like, when I put this on, it's going to sound like I'm playing through a Marshall, as opposed to like I am miking a Marshall, I'm making a Marshall far away, or even like a touch of the tonality of the amp, as opposed to like playing through it. So this is a really strong, I think of it a little bit like flavoring. Like this is, I'm just gonna like dump the whole bottle of spices into the mix right now is kind of what we're doing. So let's use this one. And I'm actually gonna switch over to the controls for this. So this is our control panel. We can change presence, bass, middle, treble, volume, input. We've got a couple different options. So let's actually start with high stereo. I really like the sound of that. Let's keep it centered. I'm pretty happy with my volume levels in this lovely little rough mix. Still waiting on final vocals, of course, but for the instrumental purpose, I really like that. So this has been put straight on, and this is how you can hear the difference. So that's really strong. That's a whole bottle of spices, guys. So let's unsolo that and see if that makes a difference, because yes, putting something into a mix makes a big difference. So I like that, but it's a little strong for my taste. So we're gonna take some of the spices out. And we're gonna do that by routing it to a bus. So what I've done down here is I've gone down to my sends. I've made a bus / aux send, went ahead and named it Marshall right before this, dialed it up just a little bit, just turn it up from there. We can go from there, go down here to my bus sends with that Marshall. I'm gonna turn this plugin on. As you can see, we've got our controls. Aren't they pretty? We're just gonna keep it kind of like this at the moment. I've already got it dialed in a little bit. I'm pretty happy with this. We'll play with it in a second. I want to get the strength right. So this is gonna let me, I think of this as a little bit like percentages, although it's not linear. So keep that in mind. Faders and dB are not linear. So let's listen to it again. And we're actually going to include this in our solo as well. So whenever we play, bring it up. So I'm happy with that level of flavor. Like I'm liking that. I tend to put a lot of crazy effects on sends, as you can see, and even then I'll route this like back into my band bus just because of the way I've got like my controls run. I really like being able to really have control of my whole band at once, because I'll do a lot of instrumental work, and then from there, now like when I move my band fader, everything's going to move in relative, so I don't have to worry about like, oh, I moved the rest of my band and now I've got to turn my Marshall down too. This is a nice little failsafe, is what I call it. It's a nice little put everything together, put everything on one fader, one button control sort of thing. And I'm basically using that band aux to VCA. And for those of you who don't know, VCA stands for voltage control attenuator, and that just is a fader that you can use to control the volume or loudness level of something. It's really more helpful if you like a physical console, but they even work in Logic. So moving back to our DAW, I really like that level of flavor. And I'm gonna even do the same thing with the selector too. I've already got it pulled up some and moved on when I'm over here with my pre's. Select that channel. So without moving my fader level, right, when I'm running multiple tracks into the same bus, I like to kind of set my fader level on my aux send, and then I will use this to control the amount of signal I want dialed up. So that way I'm not like moving my fader position every time. I know this is what it's going to sound like as long as that fader's not touched. And the great thing about that accent is I can automate it, right? So if I decide that I don't really want to take this approach and leave everything fairly static, if I want, let's say, the first pre-chorus to sound like it's got way more flavor than the second pre-chorus, I can do that with automation, which is also really nice. You can automate anything, guys. It's a really, really fun tool, really cool trick. It does take a lot of time. So pros and cons, pick your battles. Cool. I'm pretty happy with that, but I don't necessarily, I love that flavor, but let's play with the spices a little bit, right? Especially when we're going back to this chorus. So as you guys can see, I'm changing a couple of my different settings. So this is basically like a kind of like a built-in EQ, sort of. I mean, it's an amp, right? So even the amps behind me, I have all my lovely little knobs, and I can turn up my treble, my mid, my gain. The awesome thing about Marshalls is that a lot of times I have two channels, a clean and a distorted or dirty channel, and that's that really classic like Marshall grit you hear. So we're kind of blending that at the moment. The input is going to tell me which channel I'm going into, and they're all going to sound a little bit different. So we're just going to play around with our tonalities right now, which is kind of what I'm doing. So for me, I really like that because this is a tube emulation based amp. And so I really want that warmth, right? So we have the option to make it cut through a little more. I'm really pretty happy with that. As you can see, I cranked the bass up just because this song, we've got a lot of, we've got some 808, we have a live drum kit, we've got some synth bass. And that's really great for the super low end. I feel like I wanted to bring up my like 300 to 500 range. Just so that way I have a little more support, and that way I can blend my tonalities. I don't like personally when I'm mixing where I feel like there's this gap in between my one chunk of instruments, like all my rhythm stuff, and then all my lead and guitar stuff. So this, I'm kind of treating this like a rhythm guitar, and I'm using that to kind of bridge the gap. And so that's why I turned the bass up. I also just like the way that sounds. And you don't always have to have a reason. Sometimes you can just like the way it sounds. As long as it works, go for it. So that's kind of what we've done. And we have successfully reamped this, by the way. We're running it through an amp, and this amp is into my routing. I can also just run this directly out. You don't have to worry about any crazy bus routing. But yeah, let's take a listen to everything as a whole now and see what we think. Awesome. So there you have it, guys. And another reason to reamp that you don't necessarily have to is to change tonality between sections as well. So if I play this for like another 2 seconds, you'll hear our guitar sound very different in this transition. So yeah, that's kind of where that comes from, and reamping is a great way to make your guitar sound bigger without doubling, without worrying about phasing or even artificially doubles. It's also a great way to just bring out different tonalities and make it sound like you have 6 guitars sometimes if you only have one. And it's also a great way for using VSTs to make something sound a little more real. We'll do this one last time over here with our synth bass, right? So very futuristic sounding. So this one, I'm probably just going to put directly on. I'm actually just going to use this. It's UAD Ampeg SVRT Classic. Love, love, love this thing. I track a lot of bass, play a lot of bass. It's one of my favorite amps. Thanks, UAD, for this one. Appreciate it. So this is kind of what the visual editor of the other plugin looks like. But it looks like Marshall instead of Ampeg. So that's kind of how you get the difference. So this way you can look at this version, and if I go over here and it controls, you'll see it looks just like the other option. So this way you've seen both of them. For this one to make it sound a little more guitar-esque, I think. As much as I love the futuristic sound, there's a lot of synths and pads in this, and so maybe making a little bit of difference in tonality is not going to be such a bad thing. So I can actually, we have 2 different settings on inputs, whereas on the Marshall we had 4. This is a bright and normal, so let's just see what it sounds. This is directly on, by the way, so we're dumping the whole bottle of flavor into the channel. And we'll see if we like it, and if it's a little too much and we still like it, we'll do the same thing and put it on a send, but if not, here we go. So turn this off. Yeah, I think I'm actually pretty happy with that. Let's just set everything all together. So what I've done, right, so you have 2 different inputs, bright and normal. I really like the sound of the normal. To me, it sounds a little more natural, a little more like the thumpy warmness of a bass guitar, which is really, I want to take all the thumpy warmness of a bass guitar and preserve that and enhance that if at all possible. It's kind of what I'm trying to do right now. And so I'm going to leave the volume the same just because I don't want to mess with my gain structure. I am going to turn the treble up a little bit. I did turn the bass up. This is called ultra high and ultra low. They're different setting switches. I don't really want to take the ultra high on this just because you heard that little bit of a crackle because it is a synth and not a bass. So even though we are reamping it by running it through an amp, so I'm going to keep that ultra high off just for this because I want the sound of it. And then I will definitely turn that ultra low on to get all of those frequencies. And let's unsolo it and see what we think. I'm pretty happy with that. Nice and warm and thumpy. That's the goal. So anyways, that's what it sounds like when you put an amp directly onto a channel versus using it like putting it on a send and using it like an effect. But there you have it, guys. That is reamping. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, put it in the comments on Gear Fanatics, ask questions in the Facebook groups. If I can't answer, I'm sure somebody else can, and I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.